This is awesome.
I tried to do this once before with what did I try to record? I tried to record something else onto a computer laptop screen, and it doesn't run at 24 frames per second. It runs at 17 frames per second or something, and it created all sorts of weirdness. But we can.
I love that there's peanuts over the floor here too. Such an interesting.
Welcome to the most interesting episode of Taco Tuesday ever.
Peanuts on the floor.
We had to do this because
episode 1.
we had to do this because the Wi-Fi is terrible in this hotel. So, we're going to start the episode with the other stuff we recorded before it glitched?
No, I think we should start over.
All right. Hey, John.
Hey, how's it going?
This is weird.
Yeah, super weird. We're kind of in this predicament because the Wi-Fi and all sorts of issues with technology. But which, oddly enough, last week we were affected by all the flight, like the glitches and that safety malware thing that went out that affected ATMs and airlines and shit. And I always thought it was weird that we have one company that oversees the security for a whole bunch of shit. Yet we allow it to happen, yet we're also the same society that gets pissed when Disney will buy Star Wars, Marvel, all these other IP addresses. Everyone gets up and roar there, but when one company does security for all these major things from Amtrak to airlines, no one says anything until it's an issue.
Well, yeah, like we got this lattice work of everything's built on this, I guess someone in the comments can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like we build these systems off of existing things, and we just add to them and add to them and add to them, and it kind of creates this out of balance sort of system where you're just sitting on this stick house of stuff, and eventually it's gonna teeter over and fall over. It just takes one little thing like that to throw everything into chaos. And it's I think people would be. I would be filled with anxiety probably if I knew how close we are to like everything just falling apart at all times. And
who's the guy, the company that's overseeing this small group of people that could literally at any moment be like, screw this and set a whole chain of events off. John McAfee just eradicate it all.
Well, didn't he do that? What did he do? Was it China or something where he sold them a bunch of computers or software or something, but he talked about this.
Yeah.
And he loaded a bunch of spyware into it so he could see what they were doing in regard to him and like if they had any ill intent toward him. And he said he didn't find anything out with that.
No, but he was able to basically get all the information to all these people that like governments and stuff that were using his software as security.
What
an interesting guy.
So that was just they say it was accidental.
Yeah.
This was just an accidental thing that happened.
Yes.
Like this person made this update for the CrowdStrike, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Made this update for Windows for the CrowdStrike software, and then hit send it out, went away for the weekend, and everything went to shit. Airlines, banks, hospitals, 911 services, Wi-Fi services, phone services, Verizon, AT&T. So, like, that means that there are people out there with nefarious intentions who could just take everything down on purpose and probably make it way worse than it was. So why do you think we're not seeing that yet? And I think we will see that.
I think it's coming. It's just a matter of who's saying who. Maybe this is a trial run type thing.
Yeah, but again, man, I try really, really hard.
Like, I'm not saying, say I worked at CrowdStrike and I was a good person, like I actually loved that job. My first thought would be, man, how this happened so badly? Can I trust someone in here that's already not been paid off or infiltrated to, hey, when the time comes before the election, hit it?
Yeah,
How do you vet that?
I try so hard not to be a conspiracy theorist. I know no one on here believes that because we've talked so much about conspiracy theory stuff. But I really do. Like, I always try to go to the easiest answer first, man. But it just seems like it's always an election year. It's always, when the beast starts to kind of flail around because it's worried about
Right.
things, right? That these things start happening, you start seeing these things take place, and it's just going to get more wild. Like, think about the fact in the last week,
Oh God!
in the last 2 weeks, we've seen once in a generation type of events take place, and we see, and every year now we've got, and the closer you get to election, the more you get these what they call once in a generation, once in a lifetime,
moments.
types of moments. I mean, we had an attempted assassination on a former presidential candidate, and then we had the president of the United States disappear. Completely disappear.
Yeah. Grow taller.
Grew a few inches.
Yep.
And if anybody wants to research that, that's interesting. There's pictures of Biden standing next to Benjamin Netanyahu. They're both 6 feet tall, and they're the same height. And then this new picture of Biden and Netanyahu last week, and Biden's about 6 inches taller than he is. I don't believe anything, man. And again, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist.
Yep.
It's just like, what is that?
It's too on the nose. They put it out there, so you got to question it.
What is that? And then, and some of the stuff, man, if you look at some of the nuances of the last speech he gave on TV, like it looks like an AI generated thing where like his face will move, but his ears and hair don't move.
Well, that Kamala thing where he called in
So
was
strange,
they said
man.
It was like 95% AI.
Yeah. So
actually,
98%
Yeah.
AI. So there was this thing where Biden called in to congratulate Kamala Harris. And by the way, let me finish this too. The once in a lifetime thing where now a sitting president who could run again is saying they're not running again, and he's passing it off to his vice president, whom, how about this? I got more delegate votes than Kamala Harris did. Think about that for a second. Like, meaning no one, like even when she ran the first time, she had under 1% support or 0% support,
Yeah.
and then she gets put in places, and no one's voted for this woman, and yet the democratic process is being just skirted, where it's like, there are no primaries. The Democrat voters don't get a say so in who their candidate is. Like, again, I've had more delegate votes than she has, or the same amount. So all of that stuff takes place, and now when Biden calls to congratulate her on her winning or becoming the nominee or whatever it is, passing the torch, so to speak, he's putting his putting his support behind her. He does this whole phone call, and she's talking to him, and she almost slips up, and you can find this video where she goes, where she said, "We can hear you, Joe, on the record," and she starts to say recording,
Yeah.
and then she goes on the call, and she stops herself. You can hear it, like it's so interesting. And then someone took his voice off of that phone call, and there's some software you can get where you can drop in audio and see if it's AI generated, and it came back as 98% that it's AI generated. So it wasn't even him talking. Think about how fucking wild that is. That and unless you do this type of research, you have no idea. You don't even know that that's the case.
To kind of go back to what you said, this isn't picking left or right. Like there's faults in everyone, but people that hate Trump so much are willing to sacrifice the constitutional right to due process for actually voting in right candidates with votes and delegates, and it's just like it's so crazy how people pick and choose that.
Well, it's not left or right, because I have a feeling that here's the thing: everything is sold to you by your political parties as saving democracy. We have to save the United States. There's an existential crisis. Everything's gone to shit, and only our insert politician here, only our party member can save you. And I have a feeling, man, that I don't even have a feeling, I know for a fact that if given the same opportunity, Trump supporters, I promise you, Trump supporters would be like, in order to save democracy, we just have to put Trump in office without an election.
Of course.
If Republicans could circumvent the electoral process and just place in the person they want in, they would.
Yeah.
Like it's not, it has nothing to do with, it has to do with we've been sold a crisis on purpose. We've been sold a crisis. And only our person can fix it. And so look, I happen to be of the opinion that Kamala Harris is wildly unqualified for the job that she's now up and running for. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
But on paper and also by experience, like you just kind of tell she's out of her depth as vice president, much less as president. But that doesn't mean that I want the. And by the way, I'm not saying that Trump is qualified to be president. I just think that he has some acuity there that is.
He has at least experience being president.
Correct. Would I love? And I've said this before. Would I love to have other options? Absolutely. God, yes.
Yeah.
But this is where we are. But so it's not a party thing. But yes, the Democrats are making it very obvious that they are willing to, and their supporters are like, yeah, whatever it takes to get Trump, to have Trump not win, we will do. By hook or by crook or by whatever.
Right.
But I have a feeling that if the option were given to Republicans to do the same
course,
thing, even these people that say we love the Constitution but that's the gut check, man. Do you love democracy and the Constitution enough to not have it go your way, but you still have to
respect the process,
respect the process enough to preserve it? And that's where I'm at with it. Again, in order to preserve democracy and in order to preserve our republic, because we're not in a democracy, we're in a republic.
Yep.
In order to preserve that, I'm willing to not win. It's not about winning. It's about preservation.
Correct.
So I just want to see the process play out the way it's designed. And I don't think it's healthy when someone is just being placed in a position circumventing the rights of the people. The people there should be an open primary again.
Right.
And people should be given the option of is it Kamala Harris? Is it Michelle Obama? Is it Gavin Newsom? Is it
Bernie Sanders?
Is it Bernie Sanders?
Right. Robert Kennedy. Let it be.
Bernie Sanders is a perfect example. This happened last time with Hillary Clinton.
He got railroaded.
Where Sanders was winning and leading and doing all these things, and Clinton wanted to be the nominee, so she went in and stole his delegate votes, basically. And I don't forget exactly how that played out. Please do some research into it, but it's out there. I mean, it happened. So look, I and this is not, I don't think this is conspiratorial. I feel like the system. This is why we talked about this a bit last week, and I know last week got super divisive about politics with certain people, and I don't apologize for that. We should probably steer away from politics after this for a minute, but I think we talked about how, or at least myself, I'm skeptical of when people are that adamantly against somebody.
Yeah,
they probably are. They're shaking up the system. They're in there messing with the system, the internal system, not our democratic system. So, we basically the way they like it to run is we're going to put our people in, whether it's Republican or Democrat. Your two choices, we're fine with either one of them because they're going to play ball within the system.
Yeah,
it's going to be
rules.
It's going to be the appearance of we don't want this person. We don't. But in the end, whether it's a Democrat or Republican, whoever gets voted in is someone that can be controlled and dealt with, and is going to play ball. So nobody's meal ticket goes away. Nobody in our government's money-making ability gets messed with, and who knows what other kind of abilities. There's a dark force. We've talked about that, at the top, and I think that it's in control of everything that happens. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what it is or who it is or whatever, but so they're fine with the options that they want given. I think the statistic that is most mind-blowing is this will be the first election since 1976. Since 1976 that there has not been a Biden, a Bush, or a Clinton on the ticket.
That's wild.
Since 1976, one of those three families has been on the presidential ballot. And been in some sort of other than the Trump administration, again, have been in some sort of control, have been in some sort of control of something. Biden, It was Bush Sr., Bill Clinton, Bush Jr., Vice President Biden, President, and then the Trump administration.
Yep.
Still on the ticket, but and so think about that for a second. The one administration where none of those people had any sort of, seemingly had no sort of control on what was going on. That's when the shit hit the fan, and our entire world changed at that point when Trump won in 2016. Well, why is that? Why all of a sudden were we thrust into misery? Were we told that
the system was shocked?
The system was totally thrown into disarray. And so I think everything's copacetic as long as they have the person in there, the people in there that they can control. And this is, again, why they don't want Trump again. And I think what we're going to see, honestly, I think we'll end up seeing, once we get past this election cycle, because whether he wins or not, this will be the last time Trump runs for president, ever. Once we get past this, you will see everything calm back down politically in our country. All of a sudden, everything will be fine again. And they'll let the people go back to sleep because they can continue to do what they're doing behind the scenes, while behind the scenes, we're being pushed.
Which kind of makes me upset because people are fired up. Right? I don't know. It's a weird. I think the problem I have with the whole thing on both sides is the fact that if you do something, these people that don't own up to it on both sides, like Kamala Harris. I'm not a border czar. Well, you were a border czar. You were. Yeah. And then all of a sudden they're trying to tell us we're idiots. She was never a border czar. She's never appointed that, even though it's on official documentation.
Right. Well, and just to clarify, that Kamala Harris was made the quote unquote, whether it was an official title or not. I don't know if it was I think that might be their thing they're picking at is. But she was called the border czar. She was put in place by Biden to take care of the border problem, all the people coming across, and she couldn't do it or didn't do it, and now people were calling her out for being the border czar, which you can go back and watch. It's interesting. You can find videos of them calling her the border czar, and
the same press secretary who's now saying, no, we never did that.
And now you're being told she was never the border czar, and you're just being gaslit into believing that that's not the case. But that happens with everything with us, man. And it's like, and most people don't pay attention enough to even care, or to realize that that's being done. Again, this is not a right or left thing, man. This is you want the real, people talk about how the threat to democracy and a threat to our republic. This is the real threat to it. Unfortunately, it's been there for a really long time, and I think we're just starting to notice and realize that it's been there for a long time. I really think at least since the Eisenhower administration, right? Because Eisenhower, he was the first one to have to deal with the NSA, the CIA, and he warned against the military-industrial complex on his way out of office. He has a speech of him talking about beware of the military-industrial complex because it will keep us in perpetual wars in order to feed itself. And that's what's happened. But for me, really, it's the JFK assassination, and then all the assassinations of the '60s: Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Robert Kennedy. Yep. These were assassinations that were done by our government to keep that control, because these were people who were rocking the boat and were upsetting the political equilibrium that was going on between both sides. So both sides could continue to embezzle, money launder, make backroom deals, inside trade. Who knows? Pedo stuff probably.
Yeah, for sure.
Weird stuff, the dark things, and all of a sudden you have these outsiders that come in and want to shake things up, and they can't be allowed to do that.
Can you imagine MLK back then? Equality rocked the system. It scared people. Yeah. So we got to kill him. Well, it's wild.
And the thing is when you killed him, that message got stronger, right?
Correct.
You created him.
He died first.
Malcolm X as well, man. Yeah. Malcolm X, when I was a kid,
he gets a bad rap, though. I think
that's what I was about to say. When I was a kid, again, I'm a white kid growing up in Charleston, South Carolina, right? But Malcolm X was just seen as this radical dude, and I think probably because he was not a Christian, that he got a bad rap in the Christian society, Christian circles. But he got a really bad rap, man. And I look now at things that he said and ideas that he had, and he was spot on, dude, about a lot of it. But I think that you get rid of these people, and the they become martyrs, and it grows. And I think what you saw what really came in the 80s, and what you really saw come on in the 80s was sort of almost the beginnings of the realization of the Martin Luther King dream, or that ideal. You know, he's the figurehead for it. It wasn't just his dream. It wasn't, but this thing where, like, I lived through it. This coalescing of people into more of a body of one, rather than being than this racial ideology of you are black first, white first, American Indian or Native American first, Chinese first, Hispanic first, type of mentality that we live in now. It was more of we are Americans and we are one. We talked about this last week. This united thing that I got to experience, but that became too pervasive.
Yeah,
and it became, everyone was getting along too well. It's like, hang on a second. This is a united people is a danger to whatever is going on behind the scenes and whatever our government is up to, and world governments, not just our government. And so we better divide this. We better divide and conquer. And so that's where we ended up now. Is you're told that the most important thing about you, the most interesting thing about you is your skin color. The most interesting thing about you is your sexuality. The most interesting thing about you is your religious affiliation, and or non-affiliation. But really, those first two things, sexuality and race, have become. You're told that, like, that's your identity. Don't you ever forget it. And I love someone like a Dave Rubin. And if anyone who's not familiar with Dave Rubin was a extremely liberal gay. He's Jewish, gay, liberal pundit or
checks a lot of boxes,
newscaster, or whatever. And he's come more to the center now. Some people would say more right wing for sure, but what I love about him is what he says. He goes, me being gay is the least interesting thing about me.
Yeah,
it's like third or fourth or fifth down on my line of things that I think about on a daily basis with me. He's like, I'm a husband, a father, person of faith. All of these other things, business owner, all these other things before I think about being gay, and I think that's just a really healthy way to think. Even if you're a heterosexual white Christian male, which is like the bottom of the barrel now, as far as on that ladder of hierarchy, is like, I don't think about those things on a daily basis. And by the way, I'm not saying that some people. I'm not. This is. Again, I'm not a fan of the victimhood mentality for anybody, for myself included. We talked about that with the depression. Like, I don't like feeling like a victim. But for some people, they do have to think about those things on a daily basis. Some people, not I wouldn't say a majority of people, but there are some people who do. That stuff does enter into their daily life because maybe they're in a work environment where. You do maybe have a racist boss or a sexist boss or something, and you do have to, you're reminded every day of that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that stuff doesn't happen. I'm talking in a broad scope, us getting back to a point where those things aren't the most interesting thing about us would be very beneficial in fighting this thing that we can't control, this real danger to our way of life. Unfortunately, it's just been so ingrained and in place for so long. Again, think about that. 1976 was the last time that a Biden, Clinton, or Bush was not on a presidential ticket.
We've had so much shit happen with this year alone. We haven't even talked about the Palestine-Israel, the Capitol this past week with statues burned, American flags being burned, and no one. We're one of the few countries in the world that allow these peaceful protests, but the ability to protest or think differently.
Yeah.
Yet you come to our country, now obviously these are U.S. citizens that are on either side of the political folly here, but you're allowed to do this, yet you take down our American flag that represents all this free stuff you get, rights and whatever, and no one there stands up. Like, I get to the point where if I walk through a cemetery or see a neighbor's yard flag twisted up in the branches or something, I'm fixing it.
Yeah.
I don't care the rain, snow. Yet we allow these people, it's these fucking politicians inside the Capitol building looking out the windows, looking out there, seeing the American flag burn. Not one of those people walked out there. The only 3 people that were, it was actually 2 Republicans and a Democrat that came out that night and actually did put the flag back up. But it's one of those things where you're kind of like, why do we allow it to happen in our country just because we're allowed to? Like, we got to protect the flag.
I mean, John, it's not something that I would choose to do and not something that I'm about. However, yeah, man, it doesn't mean that if I see it happening, do I love what the flag represents enough to do something about it? I would hope so. I haven't been put in that position.
Right.
I would like to think that I do, that I would do something. But they do have a constitutionally protected right to do that. You know, and therefore that's what America's about. And it sucks. And on a level of like, man, that hurts, you know, to see that and to watch the irony of that. You know, I'm going to destroy the symbol that represents my ability to do this thing. And it's, you know, it's very Orwellian, right? It's like, you know, and until that is taken away, oops, you know,
right?
Oops, I hated this thing so much that I got rid of it, and now it's not there to protect me anymore. I'm not allowed to do these things anymore. And that's the dangerous thing about revolution, man. We've talked about this before. That you know, I haven't watched it ad nauseum, but I've definitely watched Cuban nationals talk about how they supported this uprising and they supported this revolution, this communist revolution that was coming from you know, Castro's and the Che Guevara and but then the dog caught the car and the rubber met the road. And they realized that the revolution wasn't about the people. The revolution was about the revolutionaries. Yeah. And the revolutionaries took over and got what they wanted, which is power. And that's all it was. At the end of the day, there's no honor amongst thieves. It's like putting pirates in charge of you know, of a ship. You know, it's like you know, they plunder and they get what they want, and then to hell with the rest of you. And so, you know, I didn't see anybody, if you want to know how this ends, if you want to keep going with this sort of revolution of tearing down democracy and tearing down capitalism and tearing down, now, when I say capitalism, I don't mean unfettered capitalism. I'm not a fan of giant corporations and you know, being in charge of everything and sucking up all the money and no one else having anything. That's not what I mean. I mean the real capitalist experiment and experience. But if you want to see how this ends, you know, I didn't see anybody getting on boats and going to Cuba. No one was like trying to get there because it was so awesome. You know, rafts and boats full of people fleeing that.
Who was the one with Clinton? Elian Gonzalez? Was that the famous?
Gonzalez, yeah. Where Clinton deported Elian Gonzalez back to Cuba. You know, it's that's the thing about America, man. I've said this before. It makes me super proud. Like I believe that the legal immigration process in the United States is too difficult to get through, but I also like a lot of what is done. The fact that you have to go through a civics test and you have to understand the way our government works and earn your right to be here. I'd
rather have it too tough than open borders.
But there is the internal workings, just because it's government run.
Very convoluted.
It's not streamlined. It's not a streamlined process. But nothing makes me more proud than seeing people come to our country, become citizens, and integrate into our society and bring your wealth of experience and culture into our society. That's what America is. America is like a cliche, but it's a melting pot. I love that. It makes me super, 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 super proud. And why do so many people want to be here? Because they can come here and protest and speak and, you know, have their own opinions and have the opportunity to earn and to grow and to pull themselves up out of a situation that they can't do that anywhere else in the world. I'm not saying it can't happen anywhere else in the world. I mean, it does happen in other Western countries, but I think it's just more of a we have so much land and so much so many resources. Be they the natural resource or societal resources that we have for people to get to a type of existence that they never thought possible. And so when you deconstruct that, and I know we're talking about how like this evil thing at the top of it,
yeah.
And there is, man. But at the end of the day, there are also protections that when you get down to this is why I talked last week about getting down to more of the state level, the local government level. There are, protections in place to protect us and to help us achieve things. And if you deconstruct that thing, it's never coming back. You can't just blow down the house of cards and look out on the ground and go, now what, and expect it to build itself back. It just doesn't happen.
Right.
And it would never happen again. And so all these people that are enjoying their right to protest, I don't like watching people spray paint statues and burn things and destroy things. But I mean, look, you can be arrested if you're vandalized, but we're not doing that. I don't necessarily agree with that side of it. I think that actual peaceful protest is the way to go. But
to go back to the Che Guerrero thing, do you find it weird that people in our society romanticize and like people like Che, Fidel, Charles Manson, when you see kids with T-shirts or like this stuff, where it's like, the fact you wear that stuff, not understanding the history of what these people did, it's super bizarre how we allow.
I'm that kid, man. I wore a Che Guevara T-shirt.
Is that because you saw someone else wear it?
Yeah, dude. It was all about Rage Against the Machine and the Red Star, and it was fucking cool. And I didn't know the first thing about him.
Did your dad see you wear that shirt?
No.
Okay, because he probably would have been like,
"Oh yeah,
Dad would get the fucking truck."
But I didn't even I didn't equate. This is the thing. I didn't equate that with any sort of communism or anything. I was like, I had a cultural.
Yeah.
I equated it with like this culture that I thought was cool. And that's the thing. Like that's if you watch, that's why they call it the culture wars.
Yeah.
That's why people that have that generally have good intentions for things and for people don't win culture wars because they don't know how to what's the right way of putting this? They don't know how to twist and bend and form, kind of a malleable clay, sort of form something that to form something like a message like what Che Guevara had or the communist message into something that's palatable and cool in order to push that agenda back out.
Right.
I just thought that there was this great looking outline of this dude, and he looks very proud, and he's here, and he's got this red star. And
that's what I find the irony of it. It's very stoic, very
looks
cool,
very powerful,
very pop culture. This is iconic.
Yeah. Then you just do some reading on what that dude did and what he was about, and Cubans here in our country that see that guy and they're like, that guy murdered.
Fuck that guy. Yeah.
My family.
Yeah.
Yet here's Tom Morello up there with this fucking thing, and that's that whole Rage Against the Machine thing makes me so sad, man. For me personally, because it's like right now here we are. It actually made me. I didn't understand it until I looked at it through a different lens. By the way, I still like one of my favorite bands sonically of all time. But
where are they right now?
But here we are where the people are getting crushed by the government.
Yeah.
And they are nowhere to be found.
Israel, Palestine, Russia, Ukraine, here, it's just crazy.
There's nowhere to be found. Yeah. But then I think about it, they're communists. They're getting what they want, which is, at the end of the day, what happens when you get communism is everybody thinks that everyone's going to be equal. everyone thinks that's the point of communism. It's a commune. Everyone is the same. Everyone earns the same, eats the same, drives the same car. We're all equal. There is nothing out of balance. But what happens with that? Well, you can't lift people up out of a situation. Like that's how it's sold to you, is we'll lift everyone else up to this level, and everyone will be fine. But that never happens. What happens is the controlling parties of the communist regime or socialist regime come in and they go, well, we can't lift, but we can definitely squash. And they squash everyone down to the lowest level. And then what you end up with is the serfs, the citizens of servitude, and the elites. And that's all you have. There is no middle class. There's nothing in the middle. And so I look at someone like Morello, who lives in a really nice fucking house and has all the money and, no different than me, right? Right. But he's supposed to not believe in the things that I believe in, right? But he's a communist. So what's happened? Well, he's an elite. And we're just the fucking peons. And we're just supposed to listen to him preach to us about how things should be different. And I think he would feel way differently how about this, if he gets what he wants, when he gets squashed down to the bottom. He won't. He'll remain one of the elites who has the stuff and is telling everyone else how they should be. This is the climate change problem, is you're being told how you should live your life because of climate change. But the rest of us, the ones that are preaching to you about it, are the worst. They fly in their private jets and they have their yachts and their carbon footprint is bigger than any one of us. But we're being told that we're the problem. You little person need to change your ways. I'm just going to be over here doing what I've always been doing.
Where's Greta been lately, by the way?
I don't know Greta.
Just a pawn.
Yeah, but again, by the way, man, like I'm on board. Like when I heard Rage's music back in the '90s, like I was young, man. I was on board with this thing about like fighting the system and lifting up the lifting, not squashing, lifting up the little person and lifting up fighting against this machine. And now this machine is wrecking everybody. And those people that were telling me this stuff are nowhere to be found. They're just sort of part of the machine now, and that makes me sad, man. That sucks. Where's the protest music now? There is no more protest music. The people that wrote the protest music are part of the problem. They become part of an ideology rather than a different. They become part of a. They were. Let me rephrase this. You think about the Neil Youngs and the Graham Nashes and the Rage Against the Machines and the people who have like written protest music over the time. They were part of an ideology that had some merit to it, had a lot of merit to it. But then they get so married to an identity of it being from a certain party, right? This is Democrats, right? I'm a Democrat, and you start identifying as that. Then you can't. Then your ideology gets steamrolled by the identity, and you can't decouple from your identity at that point. Your identity becomes a letter.
Or an animal or a color.
Right.
Yeah.
And
because you can't protest without being put into pick a side, right?
Well, you have to pick sides to protest. My thing is just like, what happened to like. What is the inability? Why the inability to be able to cross the aisle? I guess is the best analogy we have. Over to the other side, and walk with a different side in order to achieve a societal goal, because this side over here is wrong on this issue. So I'm going to go over here and walk with these people on this issue, and then I'll walk back over here and walk with these people on this issue to try to really further a healthy ideology, right. I guess. and look, man, I am not immune to. We talked about this last week. Like, I'm not immune to political rhetoric. I'm not immune to. I'm not immune to getting caught up in getting ground up in a narrative and not being able to see my way out of it. It's happened to all of us. It's happened to me recently. But when that stuff starts, when I get caught up in a fervor of something, it really causes me again to want to step back and take a second and go, hang on, like, why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? Why am I so adamant about this? Is it something that I really believe, or is it something I'm being told to believe?
Yeah.
And a lot of the time it ends up that it's something that I'm being told to think or believe or feel. I go back to when I was younger, getting caught up in the Iraq War narrative about weapons of mass destruction. We have to go into Iraq because they've got this and
kill Hussein, kill Gaddafi.
Yeah, kill Gaddafi.
Which was
Gaddafi was Clinton, was Hillary Clinton really, and killing Hussein was Bush. Yeah. Again, those two families just keep coming up, right? And you get caught up in these narratives of, like I did, of I'm on the right side of history here.
Right.
I feel like I'm on the right side.
Not understanding why those countries are in conflict to begin with.
And then it's not until later, years later, that I step back and I go, oh, I was so stupid, man.
Why did we kill Gaddafi?
But just, none of these people are great people.
No,
right?
but
so the United States put Saddam Hussein in power. Correct. Think about that. We installed him.
No longer needed.
And then when he wasn't needed anymore, he was in our way. We got rid of him. Not to say he was a great dude. He wasn't a great dude, but we put him there. My point is I just I'm very. My mom has a way of calling it Pollyanna. You've probably seen that movie. There's a movie about this girl, and she's super idealistic about the world and how everything is, everything is perfect and wonderful. And so I have this way of looking at the world in this Pollyanna sort of way, or looking at the potential of America. How about that? The potential of America in the world in a very Pollyanna way. So I am naive when it comes to thinking about these things, but I do just wish that that and this is on me too, that people have the courage of their convictions enough to say what they mean and feel and think for the greater good of the world, of America and of the world and of the people. And I throw that at the feet of someone like Tom Morello or again, some of those 60s hippie people that are still out there. What's his name that pulled his music off of Spotify for a second? Neil Young. Yeah. It's like how did you got caught up in the meat grinder? I don't think. See, the thing is, I think Morello's he is, and I'm sure he's a fucking great dude, man. I've seen,
he seems like such a rad dude to hang out with, play Dungeons and Dragons.
Right. This isn't like a shot at his personality or anything like that, or him as a person. But he's obviously really smart, and I'm just curious if he's smart like a snake, or if he's got some other thing going on that I just don't understand.
Is there a version of Tom Morello that's different than what is perceived in public?
Well, yeah, like again, right. Like I don't know the guy. I've never met him. I look up to him musically for sure.
He'll do these crazy Dungeons and Dragons games with like Vin Diesel, Joe Manganiello, Vince Vaughn. A lot of super conservative Hollywood people will play this, which gives me hope that maybe.
Well, it's not even about being conservative, man. It's it's just about like who are you really? Like that's my thing with people. Like we talked about this before. I don't care.
Yeah, right.
Like I don't care if when it comes to a friendship with someone or a love for someone, like I don't care what I don't choose my friends over politics ever, and I will not. But what I'm curious about is like, as you've preached all these things and you say certain things, but then you live a different life, and you're relying on the system that you were raging against. You're continuing to rely on this system that you said was evil and terrible, and now you are lifting it up. And I'm not sure if that's for personal gain or if that's really what you believe.
Right.
And that's what I mean. Like are you smart like a fox or like a snake? Like what is your what do you what are you doing? So
a fox snake.
A fox snake. But it's important. It's important for me to put it out there, man. I don't have any sort of like hatred for anybody like that. I don't. I'm just curious more about that and why it seems like. And again, maybe if he and I could have a conversation, he could set me straight on it. Like it seems like you are a contradiction.
Yeah,
we all are in some ways, but you know, am I off base in this? And the only reason why, and most people would say, well, like that's his business. Why do you care? Well, he
puts it out there.
That's what he's built his career around. Right. That's what he's built his life around. Is that so? I kind of, it makes me curious. So, but man, what a great sounding band. Let's go to that for a second, man.
Yeah, Paul, our merch guy out here, he did merch for them with that last tour. A bunch of us, me, Zach, and a couple of us went to the show in Toronto, the arena, and just the ambient noise, the crowd tension before they hit the stage, and then that red backdrop hit. Yeah. And you fucking just saw the rage name across. It was the most like. And I hate the band. Never got the music. I think it's. I'd go even further than Eric. I just don't. I never even got it as a kid. Don't get it now. The hypocrisy of the music. But being there, seeing them for the first time live and feeling it, and why. I think what made me happy and excited was that people felt the music. And if they were happy, that made me happy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the first time that because again, man, like that band sonically,
they're fucking tight as hell,
and just awesome. The sound of the band, and they were they were the perfect band for that message that they had. Because it was just like it was like walking into a candy store for at least for me, you know, and for a lot of other people, it was like this music sounds exactly like what the message is.
Is the whole band vocal like Zach and Tom? Like, you ever see Tim or the drummer? What's the drummer's name?
Brad Wilk.
Brad Wilk, yeah.
No, I follow Brad Wilk on Instagram, man. He puts a message out there a bunch, but not as much. He's about his family and drums and his dogs and stuff.
I wonder if they've gotten older and got tougher to maintain the rage version that started out as.
Well, I think I'll be honest with you, man. Like I've experienced this in my life where I've softened as I've gotten older.
Yeah.
To like one thing that's interesting is you know, when you're a kid, and I mean I'm talking you're under 30, right? Maybe under 35. You're supposed to have this piss and vinegar thing, man, where you're like you get used a lot by politicians and by political machinery because, look, whether you want to admit it or not, you're stupid. I was stupid.
Yeah.
You're dumb. You haven't got it all figured out, and you're easily moved and maneuvered. You're easily pushed around into a side, and that's why you don't see a lot of older people out burning things and protesting and doing these things. Usually you don't. And you know, it's what Churchill said. You know, if you're under 30 and you're not a liberal, you have no heart. If you're over 30 and you're not a conservative, you have no brain.
Yeah,
I think that was it. It's some version of that. And I believe it was Churchill. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe I can be corrected. But that does ring really true. Like when I was young, even though I grew up in a conservative Christian household, you get out in the world and your eyes are open to injustices that you see around you, or maybe you've been kept under you feel like you've been kept under the thumb of faith or something the way you grew up, or under the thumb of your family, and you can get out and unleash your true self to the world. And so it's this very liberal, classically liberal way of thinking. And I've never lost my classical liberal way of thinking ever.
Right.
I've kept that. But as I get older, I softened, man, and you start worrying about the future. You start worrying about the world you're leaving behind to the next generations. And I don't have any children, but I do know that from talking to all of just about everyone. I don't really have any friends that don't have kids. They talk about how important that is for them. And you watch a lot of these people, like Russell Brand is a perfect example of someone who was, he was the poster boy for excess and fun and sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And if you've paid attention to his journey, he's really began to care about what's going on in the world and the injustices of the world from a different point of view, from concern. And now he's a Christian. And
then they try canceling it with bullshit. It turns out to be all lies. It's crazy. It's what I said before.
Well, and so I've softened a bit. It doesn't take away my ed. Like, I'm still rock and roll, man. I know I don't seem like it on here. I'm not a rock star necessarily. I'm a terrible rock star, but I do have this heart of rock and roll within me, and I love that, the danger of that and everything. But there is this concern for everyone that I see, and it's almost like you're watching a car wreck happen in slow motion with when you start to awaken and come to life and realize what's going on behind the scenes of our governments and our institutions. And you want to warn people about that, but you don't want to be preachy.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like you just sort of, I would love to have everyone wake up and realize what's going on, because there are way more of us than them. And, we can, we 1,000% have the ability to pull ourselves out of this place that we're in and really build a world that is suited for most people. I'm not naive enough to say it's suited for all people, because no one's ever all going to get along. But again, back to America, I think maybe we built the thing that's closest to that. Even though it is the Wild West, it is crazy. It's imperfect. It's America is the Florida of the rest of the world.
100%.
And it's
a great T-shirt.
We should make that. But there is something valuable in that, and I just hate to see people from the inside causing it to go away, that or attempting to make it go away, because I think that if Tom Morello ended up in the place that he thinks he wants to be, I don't know if he'd like it very much, and I think he's just fine with it not being the way he wants it to be, or it's what he espouses that he wants.
Yep.
Because I think that if it were what he espouses, he'd better make sure he's in the elite and not down here with the rest of us, because that's where we would end up. And we're seeing it happen now, man. Like, the middle class is going away, and I'm concerned about it. Because it's you're watching the rug get pulled out from underneath people, where they can't afford houses, they can't afford anything. They're having to rent everything in their lives, and their lives just can be this potential trying to pay the rent, instead of actually having the ability to grab onto something that's theirs.
Yep.
Their piece of that dream it's becoming wildly unattainable, because we meaning our government has printed so much money. I mean, things are 4 times more expensive now than they were in 2019. I don't know if you guys have seen online. I should look at it. People that go back in their shopping carts.
Go to Walmart and fill up the same cart.
Well, they found a Walmart shopping cart from 2019, and the groceries that this person bought, it was $187 or something for the month. And he happened to notice that on that, there it said, place this order again. So he clicked on place this order again, and it was $420 or something. Because our government can just print money. There's nothing behind it. There's nothing of value behind it. Gold used to be the standard. Our entire economy was built off of how much gold we had, and then Nixon and what was his name?
The Treasury?
No. Oh God, Kissinger, Henry
Kissinger.
Yeah. His idea to pull us off of the gold standard and put us on the petrodollar, which is just about. It just relies on all the countries using our money, using the dollar to buy and trade oil. and basically making the dollar the world currency. So other than that, there's nothing behind it. And we have the Federal Reserve Bank, which is a private entity that controls all of our money. And they can just print money whenever they want. We need more money, print more money. Well, what that does is that devalues
actual money.
It devalues what it's worth. A dollar is no longer worth a dollar. A dollar is worth 50 cents, basically, or 75 cents. So during the pandemic, what do they say, 7% inflation?
Yeah,
happened?
Or just under, maybe, I think.
Yeah. So basically, you lost 7 cents off of your dollar during pandemic, which means that your dollar, is now worth 97 or 93 cents rather, and it was not worth $1 before that started because of inflation. That's why you look back and say, oh, you used to be able to look at someone who was like a suit only cost $20.
Yeah.
Whereas a suit now costs $1,500 or $2,000, like a really nice suit.
Yeah.
That's because of inflation, and that's why if you can afford to buy gold, not as an investment, not to try to turn it over and make more money. I buy if you can. I buy gold for when the economy shits the bed.
Silver too? Is that a good?
I buy silver, platinum, gold. I buy those three things.
Well, who's that actor that's always does commercials on Fox? There's like a Tom Selleck type actor from like the 70s, 80s.
But I'll tell you why. Someone told me a great thing about gold is that gold is always worth the same thing. It always has the same purchasing power. And so, again, it's not just something you can frivolously go out and do. I'm not saying just go out and just buy gold. It's like, I don't think like that. I'm not saying
Trump wants to go back to that gold standard, I think. Which, oddly enough, is why they probably don't want him to be.
So someone gave me this example. Let's go back to the suit example. They said that you could, in the 1800s, late 1800s, you could walk into a fine tailor's business and get him to tailor you a really nice suit, and you could buy that suit with an ounce of gold. An ounce of gold was worth $20 ish. Right now, I could walk into a really nice tailor's place, have them make me a suit, and I could buy that suit with an ounce of gold, even though the ounce of gold is worth $2,000 now. It buys the same thing, and it will throughout time. I don't know how I got off on that thing. I'm not trying to give people financial advice.
I like it though.
But our money has been inflated, and it's a tax. It's the ultimate tax. It's the ultimate way for your government to tax you, because you'll never quite get ahead. Like, as you progress in your life, you'll earn more and you'll earn more and you'll earn more, right? You'll build something. You'll grow, only to get to that place and realize that you still have the same purchasing power you had when you were in your 20s. It's like, because they've devalued your money. As you've earned more, they've devalued it more. And it's the way to keep the upper echelon and the lower echelon. And it used to be that we had this healthy middle class in the center. The inflation there's massive inflation in the 70s too. Don't get me wrong. It's happened before. But you could, buying your house wasn't 85% of your income. Buying your house was 25% of your income. It was much easier to purchase. And we're stripping that. Our government and the world governments are stripping that away on purpose, I think, to ultimately put us all on one currency, one digital currency, the world over, and then we really won't have any power then. So this is a roundabout way of getting back around to Rage Against the Machine or whatever. But I think that if someone like a Tom Morello ended up in the actual world that he envisions living in, and here's the thing, I don't think he has ill intentions. I think I probably, if I have to really process it, I think he probably envisions this utopia, which is what everyone who's about communism and socialism has this vision of a utopia where everyone's equal and everything's awesome. It is wildly unrealistic and will never happen. And there are millions of dead people who will tell you that that's the case. Millions of dead all over the world under the name of this equality and this utopia that could tell you otherwise if they were here. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think that if he got dropped into the actual society that he wants to live in, he would either be miserable or a hypocrite, one of the two. He'd either be miserable because he's down here at the bottom and everyone else is up here at the top, or he would be a hypocrite because he would be at the top and everyone else is at the bottom. So,
speaking of the gold standard, did you want to talk about short stocks again?
God, man, I don't know if I can give a good. I can try. All right, I gave a piss poor.
I'm into it though.
A piss poor example of shorting stocks last week, and so I will try this again. So, all right, here we go. Here's an example. Hold on, what is this? Ghost energy drink. John, I would like to borrow your Ghost energy drink. I will pay you back. I will give it back to you when I'm done with it. May I borrow your Ghost energy drink?
Yeah, sure.
I've just borrowed John's Ghost energy drink, which is, let's say this is a $10 can of Ghost energy drink. Unbeknownst to John, I'm now going to sell his can of Ghost energy drink for the $10. But I am betting that this is going to drop in value after I sell it. Okay, so I'm going to sell this Ghost energy drink to this person over here for $10.
Yep.
And now I've got the $10 that this Ghost energy drink is worth. It's worth $10. Ghost energy drink tanks down to $1 a share. So this is a share of Ghost energy drink. So now I've got this $1 can of Ghost energy drink. John, I'm going to give you back your $1 now can of Ghost energy drink that's only worth $1, and the dollar that goes with it. There you go. And I'm going to keep the $9 that I made off of that thing tanking. That's generally how shorting a stock works. You're betting that the stock is going to tank. And so what happened with GameStop, which is really interesting,
or the Trump stock,
or the Trump. So we were talking about the Trump stock. Yeah. There was a company that shorted the Trump stock. They were betting that
True Social.
Yeah, that True Social was going to tank because I'm wondering if they really knew something or if it was just
the day before the assassination attempt.
But they shorted that stock, and it didn't work out for them because the stock flew up in value when so they screwed themselves. But if you look back with the GameStop thing, that's what happened is people on Reddit saw that everyone was shorting GameStop stock, so they decided to make the GameStop. They started to invest in GameStop, which was a tanking stock and a tanking business. And these people online go, well, what happens if we start all investing in GameStop? It's going to drive the price up. So they bought all these shares of GameStop, and it started going through the roof. And all these big hedge funds and financial people who had been shorting were shorting GameStop. Lost their ass. They shut down a couple of them. A couple of one big one too. One big $1 billion hedge fund went under because of this. And if you want to know that, if you don't think that the financial system is rigged, there's this company called Robinhood, and they're still around. Robinhood is a trading app, right? Trading app and software so people can trade. They stopped trading on GameStop. Someone said, shut it down. Don't let people trade GameStop. That's highly illegal.
Right.
And basically made it impossible for anybody to buy and sell GameStop until the equilibrium worked out, because so many of these elite companies were losing their asses because we the people, decided that GameStop was now worth something again. So anyway.
Well, we got a message from a follower, which oddly enough came 2 days before the Olympic opening ceremony, where it was people in uproar over the possible shamming of the Last Supper versus the tragic Greek play, that weird, whatever that is. We would talk about that. But the message of this thing was, this guy that follows us likes how we talk openly about our Christian faith or whatever, and he's been struggling trying to deal with be a Christian when it feels like he's always attacked, or every time he feels something like the opening ceremony Olympics, that one side will always attack Christians, saying, "Oh, you're just too insensitive. It was a Greek play. Like, it wasn't about the Last Supper." Well, if it's too on the nose, it's probably done on purpose. And as a Christian, I saw that. It was very much like, my first thought was, this is fucking stupid. Give me the Olympics about the men and women who worked really hard for their countries to be here. even go back, well, it's not the Last Supper, it's a Greek play. Okay, I get that. But when the 2000 Olympics happened in Sydney, the actual opening ceremony in the country, the birthplace of the Olympics, was all the statues, all the works of art. There was no stupid cross-dressing or weird half-naked people next to children in a situation that looked oddly enough like the Last Supper. Placements, color coordination. And so I look at that and I'm like, and I went off on, I try not to, but again, to this guy's point, I'm to the point now where I will never judge you based on your faith.
This thumbs up thing just popped up over your head.
Oh yeah, it's just like that weird thing.
I don't know if that'll be on.
Yeah,
on
it will.
But
And
okay.
so, but like I get to the point where I'm like, I will never judge you for your faith, or I'll never tell you that your faith is bad. You have to listen to what Christianity or my Catholicism, but I'm also to the point now where I'm not going to let anyone just start walking over that either. Now, was I going to protest the Olympics because of that opening ceremony? No. I mean, we should be talking about how badass Gojira was, and the fact that it's these athletes, men and women. I love watching polo, handball, all the bullshit sports. Give me all of it. That's what we should be celebrating. But we're stuck now. And what we talked about in every episode is how the media and stuff, it's almost like they want this stuff to happen, this divisiveness. And it just takes away from the actual art of what we're supposed to be enjoying.
Yeah, I mean, to this person's question, I didn't read the thing they're asking about their Christianity, and I'm probably the worst person to ask about this right now. And I can be, why do you keep getting bubbles popping up over
Give
your
you
head?
the thumb.
Oh, I
It's
can't.
like
Sorry.
yeah.
Put my thumbs in here. I talk with my hands. I don't know if anybody's realized that.
Just the middle finger? Oh, no.
Yeah, I have a hard time with that because I don't ever want to seem preachy to people.
Yeah, so it's...
I definitely am, and I'm on a journey right now with it, and it's not perfect. I'm figuring it out, and I think as anyone of faith, and I can only speak from a Christian perspective because this is honestly the only faith journey I've ever been on. So I can't speak to anything else. I never was ever into anything else. I definitely dropped. I grew up in a Christian household, and I definitely put those things aside for a long time. And I wouldn't say I rallied against them, but I definitely was did not want to be pushed in the direction of Christianity. I thought for a long time that people who had faith, especially Christian faith, I had this term. I was like, and this is going to sound horrible, but this is literally the way my brain worked. There's a term called flushing the chumps, and that means that when the shit hits the fan, you'll figure out who the chumps are and who the chumps aren't. And I thought that people who had Christian faith were kind of chumps because they just didn't have anything else. You know, it was like, oh, it's an easy go-to when you can't explain anything else or you don't have any other thing to grab a hold of. And that was a very short-sighted way of me being. So I fought this thing off for a long time, and I always called it the universe. The universe would tell me something. It would say, you know, it would be some voice that wasn't my voice that was speaking to me. And occasionally, not often, but it would always be tinged in this faith thing. And I'd be like, nope, it's not for me. I don't want to go down that road. I'm not going to start reading the Bible. I'm not interested in it. It's so uncool, you know. And eventually, I kept coming up against so many immovable objects in my life, so many things that were happening, problems I was having, depression, death, loss, that I finally just was like, okay. I had a moment. I had a this is very personal, but I had a moment where I was standing in the closet in my house and in the closet looking at my clothes. It was no particular moment, and this download, this message was given to me, and it just said, that thing you're looking for in your life, that person you're looking to become, that next level you're wanting to go to, it lies in faith. It's there whenever you want it, but you're not going to achieve what you're looking for until you do this. I know that sounds like a weird thing to get. And it was that quick, but that was the information. And I'd had some other things happen like that fairly recently too. And so I just kind of surrendered to that and decided to. This stuff's super personal to me, so I don't know why. I think maybe I'm giving too much information, but this is sort of the walk that has happened.
Yep.
I was getting ready to leave for tour. My father had just passed away, and I didn't want to leave home really. We went on that tour. We played in Pennsylvania, and Josh Sturm came out to that show. And Josh and Lacey, they don't hide it. There's no doubt about it. They are very faith-filled people. And I was talking to Josh about this, what had happened, and how I had kind of been let know this thing. And Josh just anyone who knows, probably most of you don't know Josh, but he's very frank, which I love about him. Mm-hmm. And he just goes, "Oh, yeah, that was the Holy Spirit. You're being talked to." And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
But he heard me out,
yeah.
And I kind of took that as, I took that for what it was worth, and we had a really great conversation about it. He listened to me kind of wax on for about an hour about that stuff, and so the next day we had a day off in West Virginia. Where was it? What city was that? Huntington, West Virginia. And I literally in that day I said, I'm going to go buy a Bible.
Yep.
I'm going to look for a bookstore, and I'm going to buy a Bible. I want to start reading about this. I want to figure out, again, this is a big leap for me because I was like, again, people who rely on faith seem kind of chumpish to me. Like they don't have anything else, Nothing against them, but this is just what it is, And I look, it makes me really sad too because my father passed away with one of the last conversations I ever had with my dad the last conversation I ever had with my dad about faith. I said I was really envious of his faith and really envious of the fact that he had something like that to hold on to because I didn't have anything like that. I wish I had gotten to kind of undo that conversation a little bit with him. But so I'm going to go buy a Bible thing. It was almost like I was going to buy drugs. Like I was super quiet about it, and I didn't want anybody to know that's what I was doing. And I had I searched for bookstores, and I couldn't find any around. And I asked Erin, our PA, I was like, "Hey, can you find any bookstores around anywhere?" And she goes, "Oh, there's no real close. They're kind of far away." I was like, "Okay." She goes, "Why?" I was like, "No reason. I'm just just was wanting to look for a book." And again, I'm getting to a point here about you're asking about like being vocal about faith. It's not easy. I was kind of like, it was almost like I was buying an 8-ball or something. Like I was just trying to keep it under the table. Anyway, someone had just come back and they had these Funko Pops, and I'm like, "Oh, where'd you get the Funko from?" And they go, "Oh, there's a comic book and toy store next door." And I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." And we had 2 days off there, so I had a day to just to randomly go out and explore. So I said, I'm gonna walk over there to the comic book store. Rickard, who's my buddy, my closest friends, who's Eric Rickard, who's worked on every Shinedown record, great audio engineer, great friend of like 30 years. He's way into comics and he knows everything about them. I'm like, I'm gonna go buy him some, and I owe him so much, and so I was like, I'm gonna buy him some really cool comics. So I went in there and started talking to this guy who owned the shop about comic books, and like the dude couldn't have been nicer. He's pulling out all these rare comics and or seemingly cool. He was really cool, but he's like, I think this is cool. It's not rare, but it's this. And I probably bought Rickard $4,000 worth of comics that day. Like stacks of these pretty rare comic books. And as I'm walking out, turning to go pay for these things, like a monolith in the middle of this store, comic book toy store, like Transformers, Star Wars, is this section in the middle that had Bibles for sale.
Yeah,
I mean,
you never see that.
It's one of the most astonishing things that I've ever had happen in my life. And look, you can chalk it up to coincidence or whatever, and I'm sure those things, they weren't just placed there for me. They'd been there. But why was I in that place at that time?
Yeah.
on the day that I wanted to buy a Bible, on the day that I couldn't find
Seeing
a
some of the
store,
Funko Pops.
yeah.
Thinking of your friend.
Yeah. And so I found myself in that moment going, and then there's like an endless selection of them. And I'm like, which one do I buy? What do I buy? And I was like, I remember my friend Gil Gatch, who's a great friend, him I was talking about having a study Bible. I think I texted him in that moment. I was like, hey, if I'm going to buy a Bible, what should I buy?
Yeah.
And he didn't get right back to me. So I bought the New King James Study Bible. And I went up to my room and I started reading. And it felt like as I'm reading, and here's the thing, I don't even know where to start with this. You know, I've heard Bible stories my whole life. Do you start at Genesis? Do you start at the beginning?
Yeah.
Where do you start? And so I looked
Old,
up
new,
I
where,
looked
yeah.
up a YouTube video. Like, how do I start reading the Bible? And this person said, if you have any doubt, just start with the New Testament, because that's the foundation of Christianity, and start with Matthew. And then I found someone who said, hey, a really interesting way to read it is to start with Matthew and then read Acts, and then read Mark and read Acts, Luke, Acts, John, Acts, like that, because, you know, then you have the Gospels and you have the foundation of the faith, you know, the foundation of the church, I guess, in Acts. And look, so I've started this faith journey, and I've met a lot of friends that I wouldn't have known otherwise were in the faith, because they don't talk about it very often. And I don't think he'd mind me saying it. Jacoby from Papa Roach is one of those people that, because he's been very outspoken about his faith, so I don't think he minds me to saying it. But he and I actually were doing Bible studies for a while, and we're going to start doing them again, I think, because it's very helpful to have someone help you through these things. Clint Lowry is someone else who's you know, found faith. I haven't really talked to him about it, but I know he's there. And
Alice Cooper too is another one that's very.
Alice Cooper, our tour manager,
yes.
Ed Baker, is someone who is just quiet about it. But that being said, so I started on this journey, but then there has been this up and down with it, man. There's been this ebb and flow of like, I found myself in a moment, like, so when I first started in, I found myself very close. I felt very close to God, and I felt very plugged in, and I felt lighter. That was the thing, man. I'm not saying the depression went away or anything, but I did feel lighter. I felt more grounded. That's a weird thing to equate those two things. I felt tethered to something else, and I started doing more things for other people. I found myself wanting to give and do and help more. But then I went through a period where I started to feel distant from God, like way distant from Him, and I've been there for a while, and I got unsure about it. You know, you start reading things or listening to people talk about, like, if you look, you can find any sort of opinion. And I found myself with people that have all these explanations for God. We talked about Jason Giorgiani last week about, you know, how all of our gods are just time travelers from the future and all of this stuff. And it's and that stuff makes you start to doubt things, and you start to wonder, it's like, yeah, am I just a chump? Am I a chump? Am I being a chump right now? And so I would back off of it a little bit, and not out of it, but back off of it. And then you really start to realize that you can't have one foot in and one foot out when it comes to faith.
Yeah.
You have to kind of either be in or be out. And it requires commitment, and it requires a level of dedication. Patience. I wrote something down in my journal I found today that has to do with faith, and this is just my thoughts that I have on a run somewhere. Usually, when I'm running or I'm working out, I'll think about these things, and then I'll write them down later. But I think something that is interesting about Christianity for me and about Jesus is that there aren't many requirements to it. There are if you look at the New Testament commandments, I'm not talking about the the 10 commandments and all those things that are important, but it is the two commandments that you're given are love God and love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah,
and that's it. And also that Jesus never required worship; He only requires faith. That's it. And faith is super difficult. And this is what's bringing me around to this thing about like feeling like you're, you know, you don't want to be outspoken about it. I'm having trouble with that. This is the most I've ever talked, by the way, this is the most I've ever talked about this outside of I'm not an evangelist, right? I'm probably never going to be the person that's going to be out there trying to bring people to faith. Who knows? Maybe one day. I don't know. I have a lot of growth to do before I get to that point, because I have a lot of things I'm still figuring out about it and still trying to come to terms with about it. The coming to terms with it part is the hardest part for me. You know, it's like, again, the 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You know, you can't be okay. I'm not trying to make this a Christian podcast, man, right now. But there is a parable, and it's called the parable of the wineskins. And this was one of these things that rang with me. And the whole parable is that you can't put new wine into old wineskins because they're incompatible. Mm-hmm. You know, and so you can't have the new ways and the old ways existing at the same time. If you put new wine into an old wineskin, the wineskin is going to burst. They used to keep wine in skins, basically. And so you can't have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And in today's world, that's a really tough place to be, because you are criticized for having faith. And it's especially Christian. My brother-in-law brought this to my attention. He's a super smart dude. He's E9 in the Marine Corps. He and I do Bible study. We try to do it every week, but it's fallen off since I've been on tour. But we'll get back to it. But I was talking to him about how, you know, it says it in the Bible. It says, you know, you will be persecuted for what you believe, you know, and for believing this. That's part of faith. He brought something to my attention. He seems to think that that's a decidedly American thing more than it is a worldly thing, meaning that, you know, some of the other countries that he's been in his work, he seems to, you know, Eastern European countries specifically, that there's not the stigma of being a Christian as much there as there is in the United States.
Well, you look at the old churches, like how they present themselves there, where it's like...
But it does feel like I mean, look, this is not... I'm not comfortable right now talking about this yet, and I should be, right? If I truly have faith, I should be comfortable talking about these things. But that's why it's called faith. Faith is hard. Faith is difficult. It's why it's a requirement, because you have to believe in something you can't touch, feel, smell. I say you can't feel it. That's what we in Christianity call the Holy Spirit, which is that voice in your head that's not yours, that's guiding you. And I've had that happen a lot, not tens of times, let's say, like of really like concrete things that I can't explain. So you do have that. And that is the thing that for me keeps me in it, is like, I know this thing is real because I've experienced it. But having faith is difficult, and being outspoken about it is difficult, because no one wants to be, we talk about like the tribal nature of human beings. You don't want to be ostracized. You don't want to be sent out away from the tribe. I mean, I'm probably losing people on this podcast right now. Guaranteed, 1,000% is happening. But maybe I'm making other people think too at the same time. But it's not something that is comfortable to talk about, because we live in a world now where it's like, if you say you're Christian, you know, look what happened to Chris Pratt, right? Chris Pratt is a Christian, but you instantly get labeled as like I'm instantly a homophobe or something, or I'm instantly you know, and that nothing is further from the truth.
Holier than thou.
Yeah, man. Like but it's easy to just label someone and put them down for that stuff, and no one wants to. I don't want to be called those things. I don't want to be seen that way. You know, I want to be a uniting force for everyone. Naively, a lot of the time, I want to be a uniting force for everyone. But that's just who I am. That's the way I want. That's the way I choose to live my life, and I want to be a force for good. And I feel like that at its core, that's what Christianity is. People will throw things at you about, well, what about all the death that Christianity has caused?
Yeah.
Well, Christianity hasn't caused that. People have caused that.
Right.
And you can attribute that to every religion. You can look at Islam. You know, Islam doesn't equal terrorist. You know, but you've got these people over here that Islam is actually, you know, the people that I've had great conversations with people of that faith, and they will tell you how loving it is because that's their faith. That's what they love, you know. And I will do the same thing with Christianity, even though in the name of Christianity, horrible things have been done for control and for power and all those, you know. It's just not an easy thing to do. And I guess the question was, how do you deal with with your faith in today's world and having people, what seems like people taking shots at it, you know.
Because I think you find peace with yourself. For me, if I'm super happy and open with my faith, like the minute I decided a couple years ago to be, you know what, I don't care if this affects the podcast or my career. I'm not doing anything illegal. It's not bad. Being a Christian is not a bad thing. Being a atheist is a bad thing. Being a Buddhist, whatever it is. I mean, I've had people on my Spirit Talk podcast that are, one was an open Satanist, and the misconception was there was a lot of common ground we kind of came to. I obviously don't agree with that lifestyle, but we didn't judge each other. It was such an open conversation where, you know what, if you're not seeped in hate and evil and whatever, like, I'm all for it. But the minute I kind of dropped that shroud of, like, I try to appease everyone, I'm going to be happy first, and then the people in my life that support me are going to appreciate the version of me that they're going to get. And so, I don't know, it's one of those things, too, where it's like, there's still time where I see stuff in the news, or I caught the flack of all the growing up Catholic with the priest stuff that happened, and like Eric said, where it's like it's not the religion, it's the people involved. Any profession has those just evil people.
Well, I'll give you an example of that. Like I have a lot of hang-ups about Catholicism. John's Catholic. Yeah. You know, but it doesn't affect our relationship at all. You know. You know, and I have to remind myself, sometimes I'm on a rant or something and I'll say something about that and I remind myself, yeah, John's Catholic, man, I should be a little...
But here's the thing.
You know, but again, it's never meant as being mean-spirited, right?
But when I have when I have my anger and resentment towards God, especially when it comes to my dad, or like one of those things where, why did that person get sick? Like, there's so many... My first thought always is, there's so many criminals and pieces of shit that should be getting cancer first. And that doesn't happen, so I have this anger towards God where... Before, I'd be pissed off and say, I'm never going to church again, fuck this. Now it's the fact that I am angry at God tells me I'm feeling the right emotions. Because it shows I do care about all this stuff. And I don't know, like, it's one of those things where it's like, the other thing of being a Christian, people think you can't swear, you have to go to church every day. And it's like, some of the strongest people in their faith are people I know that go to church every day or pray every day. Yeah. And it's like one of those things where it's like, I think growing up, at least product of my family, obviously strong Catholics and Christians, and from Italy, like that whole thing where you have to go to church, like dress up, and you take communion kneeling on a wooden pew, and like all that stuff. Those type of stuff I love, but the idea of that can expand. I think that scares people, where it's like, I want to be Christian, but I have to go to church every day. I got to pray every day. It's like, well, hold on a second. You do those things, that's great, but it doesn't make you a bad Christian if you don't.
No. Yeah, and. You know, you talk about being mad at God, like, why do things happen?
Yeah.
So here you go, another personal story. I'm sorry if I'm boring everybody with this. Again, here I'm apologizing for my faith, right? I'm doing it right now.
Right.
I shouldn't. I'm not sorry if I'm boring everybody with these stories. One of the things that happened that I can't explain, and I've probably talked about it on here, is my father was super healthy. He's 84 years old, but he just had a physical. He had the body of a 65-year-old. He worked outside every day, 40 hours a week. As healthy as an 84-year-old as I've ever seen. He didn't seem that old, you know. Was working carpentry jobs, you know.
Yeah.
And this was. Anyway, this is the week after Christmas, a couple years ago, and I was building some paddleboard racks in my yard, and I had built the racks the day before, but I had to put them in the ground and cement them in the ground, and I was in the studio, and I thought about the fact that, oh man, Dad's got the week off from work, I can call him and get him to come help me, and then somewhere along the line, I'm like, you know what, I got this, I don't need my dad to help me with this, he's fine, he's taking the week off, and I got up out of the chair in the studio, the same chair that we normally do the podcast from, that orange chair. I got up out of the orange chair. I walked out of the door, and all of a sudden I was given this download. It said, you're going to want to call your dad right now and have him come help you, because something's about to happen and things are going to change. It was instantaneous, but that was the information. I walked right back inside, called my parents' house, talked to my dad. Hey, you want to come help me? Yeah, man, I'll come help you. Loved it. And we worked all day together that day. Putting these, I got to kind of gather myself, man. I get emotional about it. Putting these paddleboard racks in the ground and helping me with we rode to the hardware store together. Just like when I was a kid, my dad would take me to the hardware store. It was very poetic. And then we finished that day. He seemed a little tired, more tired than usual, but he's 84 years old.
Yeah.
But he'd help me pour concrete all day, and it was a lot of concrete, just like with me. If it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. Those paddleboard racks are never coming out of the ground.
Yeah.
And 3 nights later, my mom calls, frantic, saying that that's somebody out there calling my name. That's weird. Crazy. Anyway, 3 days later, my mom calls frantic and says, your dad's having a stroke or something, and get over here, and I went over there. My dad had a massive seizure, and coming to find out he had glioblastoma, brain cancer, and spent the next year, he couldn't walk anymore. He was in a wheelchair, just watching him go downhill, watching him deteriorate. And as a man, as being the only boy, watching your father deteriorate like that is sometimes you wonder, is it harder to have someone pass very quickly, or to go through something like that with them? And I've really come to the place where it's like, it's really...
The slow decline is fucking
The slow
tough.
decline is hard to watch, but you have time with them and you can tell them things too,
Yeah.
which is great. And again, I told you that the last conversation I had with my dad about faith was one of, I don't really have any faith, and I wish I did. And there's a long way of me saying that I think that why do things happen? I came to this realization. I think my dad had to pass away for me to come to faith, for me to sort of start to complete the circle of being the man I was always supposed to be.
Yeah.
I've been one thing that happens when you're in a band, successful band, and people say this. Kent Sinkler told me this one time, and he said, you never age past the day you set foot on the tour bus. You never mature past the day you set foot on a tour bus. And so I'm chronically immature. I've been you try to live this rock star life, and you try to, again, 1 foot in and 1 foot out. You want to be a good person, but you're doing, you're doing all these things, whether it's drugs or infidelity or whatever it is, you're doing these things you shouldn't be doing. And I left those things behind a long time ago. But I think that for me it really hit me hard when I had this thought about, like, no, I really think that in order for me to ascend to and start becoming the person I was always supposed to be, the man I was always supposed to be, my father had to go through this thing, and I had to watch him go through it.
Yep.
And I had to experience it in order to grow to that point. As a person of faith, I have to believe that, I'm not required to believe this, but I'm saying I have to believe that there's a reason for everything. And even the bad things, the horrible things, there's something that there's a purpose behind it. And that's one of those things that you'll say, and I don't know the person I'm talking to, whoever asked this question about faith, about it being difficult and how do you talk about it, and that's one of those things that'll get thrown in your face all the time, as being naive. Oh, everything happens for a reason, or God has a plan. And the thing is you have to, once you start to experience these things happening, you start to realize that it's true. And the fact that the commandments are so simple: love God, love your neighbor the way you love yourself. I found myself really, with my journey, it's an impossible task, but trying to be more Christ-like with it.
Yep.
And that's how I tried it, and I failed miserably. What was it? I did something yesterday where I was getting on the airplane yesterday, and this woman was just being rude, and I said something out loud, like out of the corner, like just that just, I didn't call her a name or anything, but I said something, you're just gonna have to fucking wait, or something like that. And I sat down on my seat, and I instantly, the first thing I thought about was like, well, you shit the bed on that one, buddy. Like it's exceedingly difficult to be that way. And people will throw things at you all day long about the contradictions in the Bible and whether Paul, being a mortal man, has more influence on Christianity than Jesus, because Paul wrote all the books in the New Testament, most of them, not all of them, most of them. And he's telling you how to live your life and not. I go back to the thing of the Gospels. I always spend a lot of time with those, and I try to just read about what. They call me a red letter Christian, whereas like in the Bible, sometimes some Bibles where Jesus speaks, it's in red letters.
Yes,
those are the things I want to pay attention to, and that's really what I go with. So when people want to throw to me about like, oh, it says in the Bible that homosexuality is a sin. No, it says sexual immorality is a sin, and it's not. Jesus says sexual immorality. There's no definition of that, And I think that yes, you can be sexually immoral no matter who you're with or what you do. That's just me personally. That's how I look at it. I was like, what if I'm going to be a Christian and Christianity is founded on Jesus, then what did he say? What did he say? And yes, I got a couple of things with what he said that I'm still like trying to process and figure out why did he say this, and but that's part of a faith journey, and it's part of having the courage to stand on a podium somewhere, or stand up on a mountain and say, I am this. I'm Christian and I'm trying to live this life. I'm terrible at that, and so I'm the wrong person to be sitting here giving anybody advice on that, because I find myself having a hard time with it. You watched me do it on here, where I'm apologizing for it already before I even open my mouth. And I think one of the reasons why I don't talk about it too much is because like for some people it can be off-putting, and I'm not trying to be off-putting. I find myself with a lot of my friends who don't have faith, and they're having issues in their life. It's difficult for me to not bring this up because it has helped me so much. But at the same time, I don't want to come off as someone who's stumping for this stuff. I will say, like, I'll pray for you, and I can pray with you right now if you want to do that. But because people have done, look, Josh and Lacey did that for me. I was going through a time in my life, a horrible time in my life, and I was on a phone call with them, and they offered to pray with me, and I was not hadn't come to any sort of faith at that point, but here they are offering to help me in that way, and so I will continue. I'll do that with my friends, but it's very difficult not to try to steer them in the direction of this, and so, but. Again, like, this is one of those things that I'm having trouble with, is that Jesus does say, carry what you've learned out into the world, and take these lessons I've given you, and that's why I like to spend so much time on them and carry them out into the world. Have I spent a lot of time in the Old Testament? Not really. I read Job because I think it's interesting. It's not a happy story. And I'm familiar with other aspects of the Bible, but I haven't delved into those things, the Old Testament stuff, too much. I really tried to concentrate on staying in those 4 books, a lot. But it's not easy to be in a world that thinks that you're ridiculous for what you think. I am still learning how to get over that thing of the stigma of it. The stigma of saying that I read the Bible. I'll tell people, what did you do today on your day off? What did you do on your day off? I read. Well, what are you reading? And then I go, my mind goes, I'm about to sound like an idiot. I was reading the Bible, and and people get all sorts of different reactions from people when you say those things. You either get, oh, okay, cool, or you get, oh, okay,
right.
But it's not for them, it's for me. And that's the other thing you have to remember too, is like, this is your personal relationship with God, whatever that is. And that's why I go into church. And it's good for me to have other people around me who I can communicate, talk about these things with, and maybe that's my church. That isn't, because I found that when I pull away from those things and I don't do the Bible studies as much, and that's when that one foot starts to step back out of this thing, and And let me tell you something, man. When I always tell people this, when I plug into it, things start to happen that I can't explain. And they're not always the things I want, but they lead to things that I never knew I needed or wanted. And things get set in motion when you walk in some sort of faith, you know. And I do, man. I always encourage people, like, you know, I'm from a different background, so again, I'm supposed to be carrying my faith out into the world, but any faith, you know, like one of the happiest people I ever had a conversation with was a gentleman who was a Sikh, and you know, and I've talked to a couple of Sikh individuals. It's an Indian religion, but I believe it is founded in some sort of Christianity, which I didn't know. I think it's founded in the Bible, which I didn't know that about Sikh religion. But these people are always so happy, and they're always so filled with joy about their faith. You know, you know, if it's Buddhism for you, whatever you need to there is. I feel like we're all talking to the same God, and we're all after the same things. If you have goodness in your heart, and so. You know, I just encourage everyone to take a faith journey of some sort, because it doesn't make it easy. You know, it's not easy. It's not meant for. It's not meant to be easy. That's what faith is. Faith is hard. Faith is difficult. Faith is the hardest part of the whole thing. Is having the courage of your convictions to believe supernatural things that don't seem plausible, and to also have the courage of your convictions to talk about it and be proud of it. And again, those are things that I'm still learning. So I don't really have any sort of, at the end of the day, this is a very long-winded way of me saying that I have no words of wisdom about how can you feel better about it, because I'm still figuring it out myself. There's a gentleman named John Lennox. I think I've talked about him on the podcast, maybe. But John Lennox he's a mathematician at Oxford, I believe. Irish or English gentleman, one of the two. Older guy. He's in the scientific community, and so he's always being ostracized for his faith. He's brilliant mathematician, but he's always having to defend it. He's debated Richard Dawkins, who's an atheist. He's debated several atheists. Hutchins, I think you can find John Lennox debates on YouTube. He's always got, I feel like, some of the most grounded ways of if you're really looking for a way to defend yourself or feel like you need to defend your faith, he's got some really good points, and it always makes me feel better. So that's maybe something to look into. But at the end of the day, you don't have to defend it. You know, it's your relationship, and people are going to say and do horrible things to everyone. You know, again, horrible things have been done to people in the name of Christianity in the past, and probably still are in some ways. You know, it's not about that. It's about you taking what's in the Bible and in the Word and going out and trying to make the world a better place. That's me. That's how I deal with it. That's what I think it's about. So, yeah. Anyway, I have rambled on long enough about that. We hope that this setup isn't weird for everybody today.
I kind of like it.
Yeah. Maybe we can find maybe we need a studio.
Well, it's probably easier if I come down to you. Well, the problem is we can't. You
just need to move down to where I'm at.
We have thought. I live on the dock with the dolphins.
Yeah.
We've
you
talked
become a
about.
dolphin, actually.
It's tough to record more than one or two of these a week because
they're so in depth.
They're so in depth, but it's also like we also have to wait. We've been lucky the last week to have 17 events happen that we could do a year's worth of talks on. But normally it's tough to talk about shit going on.
Yeah, it's we've tried a couple of times to film. Because we're filming these, we've tried to film a couple within a few days, and I find that on that second one, sometimes it's just hard to find stuff to talk about because we've already touched on things, and even like this one, we're still talking about stuff we were talking about last week, and so
the live episode was great. People love that.
Yeah, we could do. I mean, I'm down to do that again, man. I'm down. I like.
Yeah, that was fun.
I think we probably could have answered more questions, but
well, now we have. Well, it's one of the things where you start talking about something, you want to organically transition, and sometimes you just can't transition. Where if you're talking about writing an album, and then someone asks about the infrastructure of the Iraqi dinar, it's like I don't know how you get there without coming off as a complete psychopath.
Well, we are complete psychopaths.
Well,
so.
We appreciate the question, so.
Well,
yeah, and then so next week, or I think tomorrow, or not, I'll wait until this premieres, but this week we'll launch the second bonus episode. That's all edited with all the fancy artwork about with cartoons. But yeah,
we hope everyone enjoyed today. It's random as usual.
Yeah.
But hey, man, we talk about the two things you're never supposed to talk about:
politics and religion.
Religion and politics. Maybe we can let's get back to not that I don't enjoy talking about this stuff because I have a lot of bearing on our lives, but let's get back to talking about music and stuff next time.
Let's do mental health and artwork next time.
Yeah,
let's just cross deep sea creatures.
Deep sea creatures. All right, everybody. Peace.
Bye.